All right, guys. Lesson 2.1.1, first lesson of this new unit 2. I'm going to go through the examples with you, and they're going to go pretty quick. But I want to make a real point to stress this. In your notes, you're going to see this introduction page. I'm talking about properties of equality here. A lot of definition-y sort of stuff, a lot of learning here, a lot of things to memorize. So make sure you take the time to read these notes, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. In the notes, you have all these different properties. Reflexive property, right? Symmetric, transitive, addition, subtraction. Okay, we're going to keep going. Multiplication, division, substitution. Guys, I am not going to sit here and read through all these and go through an example of each one. I expect you to be able to read that stuff, see if it makes sense to you, and if you have questions about those notes, make sure you ask me in class, please. Okay, do not just sit there and not know what's going on. All right, but as an honor student, as an accelerated student, I expect you to be able to read that stuff and write down what makes sense and what doesn't. Okay, so that's on you. I will help you if you need it, but you got to ask. So here's some more examples of commutative, associative multiplication, associative multiplication, and distributive property. All things that we should know. Okay, this is why I'm not spending a lot of time going over it. These are all review items. Okay, all right, so a few ideas, make sure you read that. Let's get to the actual examples. Okay, we're going to go through these relatively quickly. This lesson is pretty simple. It's just identifying what property is happening. All right, so in this equation, we started with negative 7x plus 22 equals 50. Okay, they somehow managed to get from this to here, where it's now negative 7x equals 28. So the question is, what did they do? All right, and it's pretty easy to know. I think we'll all be fine with they subtracted 22 from both sides. So that would be the subtraction property. And guys, I am not going to be nitpicky about you writing subtraction property of equality. They're all of equality. If you get subtraction property, you're good to go. All right, that means you understand it. All right, that's it for example 1. Like I said, this one's pretty straightforward. All right. Number 2, which property of equality is missing in the steps to solve negative 3 minus x divided by 6 equals 4? All right, so first they did the addition property of equality. They added 3 to both sides. They added 3. The reason they did that is because they wanted to get this x over 6, x divided by 6 term by itself, which they now have. Okay, so they added 3, which was the addition property. Notice the addition property is what actually happened here to get to here. All right, so it's on a lower level. So down here, we want to see what happens. How did we get to this? What did they do? Now notice the negative is still there, so they didn't do anything with the negative. All they did was somehow get the 6, which is on the bottom of the fraction, over to the other side. So since it's division of 6, they multiplied by 6. And all this is doing is identifying the properties that happen. So in this step, to get from here to here, they had to use the multiplication property. Okay, again, pretty straightforward here, just identifying what's happening, identifying those properties. All right, moving on to the next one. All right, example 3, which property of equality is missing in the steps to solve this equation? All right, so let's look at what they did. The original equations here, they did the commutative property, which means they reordered it, right? And when they reordered it, notice that the negative is still with the 15. The positive, the plus, is still here with the 2. Okay, the reason they did that is so that they could combine these two, which is the distributive property in order to combine like terms. Really, it's not the distributive property, it's just combining like terms. I would be perfectly fine with you just writing combine like terms there. Okay, so the next thing is the addition property. Well, the addition property says you got to add something to both sides, so they added the 15. Okay, that's what they did, even though they're not showing that. That's what happened to get from here to here. Then next they divide. And then lastly, what did they do? They rewrote it. They flipped sides. They put the 13 on the right and the x on the left. That is the reflexive property. Okay, that's the reflexive property. Okay, basically the reflexive property just says if A equals B, then B equals A. Right? That's just letting you know you can swap the left and right side. Okay, there we go. One more example. All right, so example 4. What equation is missing? So this is backwards. They gave you the step, but they didn't give you the answer. They didn't give you the equation, so you have to figure that out. So let's look at what happened. First thing they did is they distributed. So they distributed the 3, multiplied through both parts. Then they're going to use the distributed property combine like terms, which again is just combine like terms. Okay, I'm fine with you just writing combine like terms, and they combine these two to get 8x. Now, the next thing they do is the subtraction property of equality. So we've got to decide, well, what would they be subtracting here if they were trying to solve for x? And the answer is they would subtract 12. And if they do that, they would be left with 8x equals, that would be 16. And then, of course, the last property from there would be to divide using the division property and to get x equals 2. Okay? Hopefully that helps you. Super easy lesson, I think. And if you have any questions about these, make sure you look back at those notes because you're going to have to memorize those different properties and their names, especially associative, commutative, reflexive. Multiplication, subtraction, all that kind of stuff is pretty straightforward. Again, read through those notes. If any of those don't make sense or you need an example or want me to go through it with you, ask me. Okay? All right.